and a smile, and everyone, and the day is saved, and there you go. How come I can't do that? Well, the real world and the world of fiction are completely different. Everyone knows that, I knew that. Sometimes it didn't hurt the dream. I didn't want to be scared of anything anymore. Because whenever my parents turned on the news, it'd all be about like fires and murders and kidnappings and explosions and terrorist activity and the world is coming to an end or we're all doomed. Hide under your beds and throw your hands over your ears and kiss your ass goodbye. It's over. You're talking to a guy who's so scared I couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave my house because I was afraid I'd get kidnapped. I didn't want to walk to school. I didn't want to leave my house because I was so scared. After a lot of coaxing, Mom and Dad told me like, that's not going to happen to you. Not out here. Because of my fears, I spent a lot of time in my room playing with toys. What toys? Well, I had like Legos. I had some Batman figures. I had Ninja Turtles. I had these little toy robots called Z-Bots. Anyone remember those? Yeah, I had a whole bunch of them. And I would retreat to these imaginary worlds, and I would play out all these great scenarios, and basically good versus evil, bad guys fighting each other, lots of explosions and things being smashed, and buildings blowing up, and planets being destroyed, and God knows what else. That reality would always be shattered when I got called down for dinner, or if my mom got mad at me about something and just barged into my room and started yelling at me, or if I had to go to school. My mom and dad thought I spent way too much time alone in my room. They wanted me to go out there and socialize. I was scared of socializing because I was afraid if I said something wrong or did something wrong or messed up in any way, shape, or form, I would get yelled at or punished or worse. What came from that was my parents stuck me in the Cub Scouts. That lasted like for a year or two, and I didn't really care for it. I still felt like kind of an outcast. And I never won those goddamn racing things they did. I'm telling you, they're rigged. The ones, we also had to do ones with boats. We had to blow them down. We had to blow them down these little river things, and that was even worse because I didn't have a lot of lung power. And I had to go up against a guy who was way bigger than I was and was very one-sided. It was awful. So what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to learn to socialize? Well, from there, my parents stuck me in another program called the Academy, where they put me together with these other kids, and we'd play like games and stuff. I don't mean like sitting around playing board games. I mean like physical stuff. Like we'd like get lots of foam balls and bats and make mazes and run around them. We'd make obstacle courses. We'd play fun games like that, and that was fun. And that was also very enjoyable. It lasted a few years, then the program basically went away. And I think where the Academy is now is just a warehouse. I did learn a few things about socialization. I hoped. I wasn't sure everything seemed the same to me. I didn't have too many friends at the Academy. I didn't have too many friends at school. I didn't have too many friends in the Cub Scouts, or hardly any. I just wanted to know how I make friends and get closer to people. There were some people who were willing to be friends with me and had no problem with it. And there were a few that were my friends and decided like they didn't care anymore and walked away. Or others and I just grew apart. One day, in one of my various Sunday morning escapades, where I would get up bright and early and go to the Boston Globe and look for the funny papers. And I'd read comic strips because that was part of my routine. And I don't know, I'd read Garfield and Curtis and a whole bunch of others. I never tried reading Doonesbury because it never made sense to me. And one day, underneath the very familiar and very appeasing Garfield strip, yes, I used to watch the cartoon show as well, which was a highlight of my Saturday mornings, was something I'd never seen before. It was a comic strip called Calvin and Hobbes. I'm reading it, and the strip is about this little kid who's pretending he's a T-Rex. And at the end of the strip, there's this woman, possibly his mom, saying, "Calvin, quit stomping around, you're driving me crazy." And Calvin responds by biting his mom on the leg. The ending strip panel has Calvin running for his life with his mother's outstretched arms following after him. Calvin saying, "How did the fearsome Tyrannosaurus become extinct? Now we know." And at first I was thinking, like, who or what's Hobbes? Who's this guy? I feel like I'm walking in the middle of a movie and I have no idea what's going on. I'm confused here. As the weeks went by, I got introduced to Hobbes, Calvin's best friend, who's a stuffed tiger, who turns into a real tiger when no one's around. Is he real? Or is it just Calvin's imagination? They don't tell you. And Calvin would go on these amazing flights of fantasy. Like, he would become a T-Rex, or he would put on a cape and mask his mom made him and become Stupendous Man. Or one of my personal favorites, Spaceman Spiff, where those Spaceman Spiff basically had no rules. And I loved the alien landscapes and the creatures and everything. Those were wonderful. Calvin and Hobbes was, well, for one, Calvin was very intelligent. He was talking like an adult, and he understood a lot of things adults understood. Very astute for a 6-year-old. I didn't really understand. Well, of course, Watterson himself said, I remember reading somewhere or hearing somewhere that Watterson said he got inspiration from Peanuts. Yeah, I used to read Peanuts, but I stopped reading it because it was so goddamn depressing. Yeah, everyone in this strip was miserable. Especially Charlie Brown. I used to joke with my friends, like the last Peanuts cartoon, Charlie Brown putting a gun in his mouth, and the bullets would miss, and they would hit Snoopy, because that's how bleak it seemed to me. Well, Schultz said, well, I don't know what his excuse for that was. The whole thing was it had strong Christian overtones for one. And I didn't really see any of those. I just saw lots of kids running around, talking like adults, understanding adult things, getting involved in some adult things, and being miserable. And, Calvin wasn't exactly like that. There were a lot of happy moments, there were a lot of fun moments. I loved how it took up basically half the page, and there was a lot of wonderful artwork, and I cried when Watterson retired. Then one day I thought about it. I sat down and I thought, I went, wait, does Calvin have Asperger's? He seems to have the symptoms of it. He's highly intelligent. He speaks very well for a 6-year-old. He's easily distracted. He prefers to be in the company of a very close friend or himself. He goes off on flights of fantasy all the time. I think Calvin has Asperger's. I talked to a teacher about this, and he said, when you're 6 years old, the entire world seems big and scary. And so he retreats to these imaginary worlds, an imaginary friend where he has control. And I said, he doesn't necessarily have control. A lot of things are going on in his imaginary land are actually corresponding with real life. Like, if he's Spaceman Spiff being dipped into an acid bath, he's actually taking a bath in real life. That kind of thing. And I thought that, Calvin to me definitely had Asperger's or ADHD or something. Something was going on. I didn't know. Waterston wasn't talking. He's still not talking. For all I know, he could have built a spaceship out of a cardboard box and flew off to the moon. But all in point. Kyle helped me to see this very important thing. There's no such thing as growing up and getting old. Do you know what I mean by that?
Oh yeah.
That's right. And for those of you who don't know, it means to stay young at heart. It means you can have the understanding and the wisdom and all the responsibilities of an adult, but at heart, you can still be that 12-year-old boy who still gets excited when he hears about, like, the new Green Lantern comic just came out, or like, they're making an adventure sequel. You can still do that. You can still feel that way. And you can still come to the conventions and dress in funny costumes. Case in point. That helped me learn. I'm sorry, my notes are a little mixed up here. Okay. Then the 90s rolled around. And there was a small anime mini boom. There were three anime shows on TV, and I think a few of you might remember what they were. First we had Nintendo's Cash Machine, or as most people like to call it, Pokemon. Yes, that was on TV, and I'll admit, when I was a kid, I watched it. I felt like there were a couple of things out of place, like, for example, why are they calling those things donuts? Those are rice balls. Even I know that. I was looking forward to the day that Ash would take Brock aside and say, Brock, for the 15th time, those aren't donuts. Those are rice balls. Say it with me. Rice balls. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mobilization. And yes, I did have the video. I had the Game Boy game. I was sort of good at it. Besides that, there was also Sailor Moon. I never watched it. Then I found out this. Those beautiful, lovely girls in that show, they were 14. They looked like they're in their 20s, but nope, they're 14. Don't you feel bad about that now? I think a few of you know what I mean. Like, yep, you're like, these girls are so beautiful. Then later on you find out, what, they're 14 years old? And you go take a cold shower. Yeah, never watched it. And the third and final one was Ronin Warriors. AKA Samurai Troopers. And that's how I got introduced to Bishonen. Or Bishis, or whatever they call themselves. And I really enjoyed Ronin Warriors. It was, they actually got away with a few things that I didn't think they could get away with. There was a lot of action, a lot of fighting. It wasn't seemingly boring or tedious, but there were a few problems, like they didn't flat out say, like, this is Japan, where it's obvious it's Japan. Instead, it's the city. And like, no, it's not, it's Tokyo. And these shows came on, my friends started talking about them. And I started talking to them with them. I was like, yeah, I've started watching Ronin Warriors. And it was kind of a surprise. What do you guys think? You guys, who do you think the strongest one is? Sage or Ryo? I think that Ryo is, and now I don't know who Sage is, that kind of thing. Those shows kind of came and went, except for Pokemon, which is still going on strong. Let's face it, Ash is never gonna catch them all. Kid, just be content with what you got. They're just gonna chug you out more and more and more and more and more, and Nintendo's gonna keep doing it. James is never gonna come out of the closet. It's obvious, we know, he's not fooling anyone.
I knew.
Yeah. And that gave me something to talk about as well, because when I was a little bit into Pokemon, I was stuck in a horrible, horrible job. I used to work at Polaroid. This is back before the wonders of digital cameras. They had these things called batteries and film. And I had to sit in the back room and take all these big batteries that were like this big, and I had to sort them, and I had to stick them in boxes, and stick those boxes in even bigger boxes. It was hell. So, but me and a friend of mine, we'd sit there and we'd tell like Pokemon stories back and forth to each other, kind of like fan fiction. And I'd say like, then Ash and Brock did this and this happened, and he'd say, and then this happened and that happened, and Brock said that, and James went over here and did this, and I would say like, and then this happened, and this thing exploded, and this thing fell over, and he'd go on and say, then this happened, and then we do that all the time. It made things kind of worthwhile. It helped, but it didn't really ease the pain to how I was in a school I didn't like. And it made me feel like more of an outcast. I was in a program school. I went to a program school in Lexington High School in Massachusetts, called the Lab Program, or as I like to call it, the fourth circle of hell. We were basically secluded from the regular high school. We would be off in our own little rooms, our own little classes, and they treated us like children a lot. And I felt really lost. It was like we're in still the same state of children. For example, if you had some free time, you could go on the computer and play like all these cutesy-poo kitty games. I didn't want to. I'd rather play like, I don't know, like Day of the Tentacle or Doom or something. But no, you're gonna play Kid Fun Learning or whatever crap it was. I was in this program for 6 years. My friends were growing up and moving on. I barely saw them. I barely got to speak to them. I tried making friends inside the program, which didn't really help. I tried making friends outside the program, the regular high school. I was fortunate to make a couple. One of them is someone I've been friends with to this day, and we still stay in contact. We meet at lunch and we talk. I remember the first day we met. I remember I was in one of the many lunchrooms they had in Lexington High School. There was like 5 for some reason. And they had vending machines that gave out these old things called Fruitopias. I don't know if anyone remembers those. And I'm sitting, every time we go to lunch, I'd always try to sit by myself away from the other lab students, because I heard what they said about us behind our backs. It wasn't anything pleasant. We weren't really seen as part of the school. We were seen as a joke. We were seen as something to be avoided. We were seen as something that was strange. And some people saw us as just not worth anyone's time at all, or to be pitied. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be looked down on and be pitied. I didn't want to be a joke. I didn't want to be laughed at. I wanted to show everyone that I'm just like everyone else. So I sit away from them and I'd sit by myself and I would read comic books. one day I look up and I see this one guy sitting across from me. I go back to eating. He doesn't say a word. I look up at him and I say, and I'm thinking like, why is this guy here? Is something on my face or something? So I said, hey buddy, you okay? You look like you've been awake for 4 days. And he said, I'm tired. The next day he showed up and I decided to introduce myself, and he introduced himself back to me. He said, my name's Dave. And I said, my name's Mike, and we started talking about comic books and graphic novels. And during the time of the anime mini boom, around like 95, 96, that's when American audiences were first introduced to Dragon Ball Z. The first original dubbed version, where everything was cut and censored. Yeah. And we started talking about that. He started telling me things about the show I didn't know, like what happens next after Goku shows up on Namek. Because after that, it starts over. But he started telling me the Japanese version, he starts talking to me about new characters and new stuff that starts happening. And he even told me that Vegeta becomes a good guy, which made my jaw hit the floor because I didn't think he was that. He didn't look like a fucking good guy to me. Even once found out, and we hang out a lot. Sometimes we go to these indie comic book conventions in Boston. And when I was there, I actually found like a Dragon Ball Z poster with the characters on it, but I was confused. Why do they all have bright yellow hair? Why is Vegeta with them? And who's this other guy with the broadsword? I'm confused. And Dave said, I think this happens around the Cell Saga. And I was like, who or what Cell? I didn't find out that stuff until a few years later, until Funimation bought the rights. And we've been friends ever since, and he's been telling, and we still contact each other and we still talk. Because of our shared interests in anime and graphic novels and video games, we have so much to talk about and so much to learn from each other. When I started getting older, I wanted to see if I could start experiencing things I'd never experienced before. One thing I would like to get out of the way is that when I was a little kid, my parents forbid me to read comic books. They said, "You're not reading that trash. It's too violent. It'll turn you into a psychotic murderer." And whose phone is this? Does someone lose their phone? Okay, thank you. And I was like, what's wrong with comic books? And they were like, no, you're not reading them ever. They're too violent and horrible and bad. If you read them, they'll poison your mind, and bad things, and you'll do bad things, and bad stuff will happen, and rah, 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 rah. So I ended up having to go to my friend's house and read comics there. And they weren't horrible and terrible. They weren't extreme, super duper violent, people's heads being pulled off, or their fingernails being pulled off, or people fucking animals. It was fine. One day, my mom and dad just gave up, and they said, fine, you can read comic books. And my reaction was, hooray! So we went down to the comic book store, and I bought my first real comic. Before that, the only comics I could read were like Disney comics, because they were safe. And I brought my first comic book, Web of Spider-Man. And I read it cover to cover, and I reread it, and I reread it, and I reread it. And because it was so wonderful. After that, I started buying graphic novels. My first graphic novel was The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. And this is probably one of the best things I ever read. But if my parents found out what was in it, they would have taken it away from me. It's not a happy story, and it's not, and it wasn't for 12-year-olds. My mom had several points, like whenever I'd have a meltdown or something, she'd always turn around and finger comic books, saying they're making me bad. Comic books are bad for me, they're making me horrible and bad, and that she should just take them all, throw them out, or use them as fire kindling. Or just forbid me from getting them ever again because because these were bad, and they're doing bad things to me. No, they weren't. No, they weren't at all. Meltdowns were happening because it was part of my disability and part of my psyche, something that could be controlled, but I had no idea how to control it. What I was exposed to had nothing to do with it. I knew better. I knew better. I knew that, like, if someone makes me mad, pisses me off, I shouldn't, like, try to pound the crap out of them or react in a violent or destructive way. I understand the real world perfectly. Mom and Dad weren't too sure about that. Sometime around 96, I started watching darker, more adult anime like Akira and Vampire Hunter D and 8-Man After on the Sci-Fi Channel. It showed me that, yeah, the stuff I've been watching, it was censored and it was cut. There was lots of stuff they weren't telling me. And I was like, I want to see the uncensored stuff. I want to see the uncut stuff. It kind of opened a whole new world for me. Well, of course, when you get older, you want to experience new and different things, and well, here I am. And I wasn't sure how to experience it, because they were kind of in rare supply. You couldn't really walk into a store and buy these things, you know. You're lucky you found any. And they were usually in the back, near the special interest stuff. So if you found any anime videotapes, they were always usually right next to, like, the porn. And so I had to go back there when my parents weren't looking and look at anime tapes. And yeah, every now and again I was tempted to look over there and see, like, hey, what's that? And she's a green girl and she has 3 boobs and she's doing what? I was in my teens. I was very curious. So I got a couple of those videos, started watching them. I loved everything I saw. And then anime started to explode in the market. They started showing up at video stores, having their own little sections. And that was good too. That gave me a lot more to experience, a lot more to talk about, a lot more people to meet. When I was younger, in Harbor Square, in Boston, there were 2 anime stores. There was one called Anime Crash. It is now a makeup store. Someone here loves makeup. And I go in there and look at videos and stuff and like, oh, I want to see it and get this. Oh, look at this. This looks so cool. What's this over here? Oh my God. Oh my God. The other one was called Tokyo Kid, which was down the street. Which was a pretty nice place. I go in, I liked both of them equally. I go in there with my friends, and sometimes we look around, look at stuff. Tokyo Kid, it's not there anymore either. It's now like an anime store slash gift shop called Anime Zaka. It's good, but it's not like what I grew up with, you know? It was a sad day. One day I showed up and Tokyo Kid was just totally empty. Nothing in there at all. lights were out, doors were shut, and my reaction was, end of an era. I had a lot of good times there. I used to take part in their cosplay contests. They were not like anything like this spectacle. They were smaller, more contained, but I enjoyed them for because how much fun they were. And a lot of people would show up, we'd talk, there'd be some live music. We'd take over the entire building. We'd like invade Newberry Comics and just find what the hell was in there, and I had some good times in there. Like I remember one time, this taught me something very, very important, which is this. Don't distract people when they're working. They don't like it. Here's what I did. I was in Tokyo, Tokyo Kid, and there was these girls then. They're all dressed up like Fullmetal Alchemist characters. And I went up to one of them who's dressed like a Godalric, and I said, hey, Red Dawn. No one gets the reference?
That 80s movie?
No. Red Dawn is the rallying cry of the Reasonable Rangers, Vic Mignogna's fan club. And she turns around and goes, oh, you know Red Dawn. Are you a ranger? And I said, nope. And she said, are you with the miniskirt army? That's Travis's bunch. Fan goes to worship Colonel Roy Mustang. And Travis, who I've met, I'd just like to say for the record, Travis is a big boy. He's like 7 feet tall. And he's like a drunken college frat boy almost. And I said, nope, after I said this time, I said, no, I haven't met Vic. This is before I met him. This is way before I met Vic. And the next thing I know, all these girls start chiming in. I met him, me too. He danced with me, he looked at my artwork, he kissed me, he gave me a hug. Red Dawn, Red Dawn, Red Dawn. I turn around, and there's the clerk, the guy who owns the place. And he's staring at me. He's all like hunched up and staring at me like this. Like he wants my head to explode. And I knew exactly what he was thinking. Buy something or get the fuck out of my store. And I just stopped and I said, nice meeting you. I found a wall scroll, I purchased it, and I got out of there before he could use his scanner powers on me and make my head burst. And then in the recent years, I've done a lot more research on my Asperger's, and I thought like, what else can I learn? What else can I do? So I sat down and I thought about, did I learn anything? My parents tried to teach me anything? They tried to teach me lots, but I never really recognized it. For one, how many of you out there are familiar with the movie Rain Man? Okay. Well, those of you who haven't seen it stars Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise as two brothers, and Dustin Hoffman plays Raymond, or Rain Man, who's a guy who definitely who's on the autistic spectrum. My parents sat me down and forced me to watch it, and I didn't want to watch it. But I was amazed how Raymond can just take anything, and he was like a math savant. He could take, he could look at all those lines up there in the ceilings on the roof and add them up instantly and tell you how many there were. There was this one scene where someone knocks over toothpicks. He walks up and just says how many toothpicks there are. And he was right down the letter, he was right. And I was amazed by all this, I was fascinated. And Mom said, there are people like this who exist in real life. What? Sorry. And I wanted to know, really? What does that have to do with me? And they didn't tell me. They thought I would pick up on it. But my mom still thought at the time the comic books were not that great, but comics did teach me a few things. For example, when I was reading Spider-Man, Spider-Man taught me this. We all have to be responsible for our own actions. No matter how bad and hard it gets, we can't give up and we have to be responsible for ourselves and what we do. We can't just step aside and ignore our responsibilities, because if we do that, God knows what would happen. You might get hurt, your friends and families might get hurt, something you might lose a bunch of money, you could lose your home, get sick. You don't know. You don't know, but you have to be responsible. And you can't ignore those responsibilities that happen, and you can't dwell on the mistakes you made. X-Men taught me things too. When I started reading X-Men comics, it was just, at the time, it was kind of weird for me because I couldn't really make heads or tails out of it. For one, the narration bored the hell out of me because it went on and on and on and on and on. But we remember in 91 when the cartoon show came out, right? Does anyone here remember that? Mm-hmm. It made more sense. It started making more sense now, without boring me to death with pages of obnoxious dialogue. It was basically that, the X-Men are mutants, feared and hated by mankind because they were born different, and this and that and everything else in between. And I knew what the people at Marvel were trying to say, and I picked up on it instantly. We have no right to judge or bully others by who or what they are. And I felt like I was judged at the time, because I was different, I was strange, I was an outcast, I was not like everyone else, so I got picked on a lot. And I never tried to look down on anybody. I didn't feel like it was my right to, and I knew what it was like to be picked on. And I knew how terrible it makes people feel. And I know what the destructive repercussions of what can happen. I used to be afraid to go to school because there was a bully there who used to pick on me. Somehow he'd find me. He never beat me up or anything. He'd just verbally destroy me. Say I was stupid, I was retarded, I was an idiot, I was a fuckhead, my parents were stupid, my siblings were stupid, everything about me was stupid. And he just verbally rip into me and tear me down. It was some of the worst experiences of my entire life. And I wanted to know how can people act like this for each other? If you don't like me, that's fine. But you don't have to insult me. You don't have to insult my credibility or insult my family. It was tough. It was tough going through all this. It was tough learning it. And it was tough dealing with it. Eventually I found others who felt the same way I did. And I felt like, well, I'm not alone. And things do get better when life goes on. They do. They really do. You just gotta focus on the better things in life and be with better people. And if someone treats you unfairly or treats you bad or is just mean and nasty, they're not worth your time and they're not worth your opinions, it's just the best to leave them alone. And if there are points if you're stuck in a situation with someone you don't like and you don't really have a choice to be around this person, you don't have to talk to them. Yeah, I know. The whole it gets better thing has been overdone according to some people, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I remember the first time I went to my first anime convention. I felt like I don't kind of see this kind of thing outside in the real world, because I wear like comic book T-shirts and anime T-shirts like they were badges, and I proudly wear them and wherever I go, and sometimes I get compliments on them, and I didn't really see too many people wearing those out in the real world. It was like they're only for conventions only. That didn't make any sense to me. So I went to my first anime convention, which was Otakon 2000. I tried my first shot at cosplay. A lot of people didn't know who I was. I wasn't wearing this. It's not like I was recognizable at the time. I was Hiro Yui from Gundam Wing. Only 4 people know who I was that year. I think we're running out of time. We have like 15 minutes left. So I think if anyone has any questions, we can go to that. Yes? Yes.
Hi, speaking as a fellow person with Asperger's, did your parents ever think your interest in anime and conventions and your fandoms was stupid?
No, never. My dad was like, whatever he's into is whatever he's into. It's fine with me. But my mom kind of thought like, it's destructive, it's violent, it's bad. Comic books will make him into a monster. She took her a while, but she got over it. My grandparents didn't care one way or another. My grandma's reaction was, boys will be boys. And grandpa's reaction was, yep, that's how things go. Now pass the rolls. Yes?
Hi. Recently I found out at my church there's a young man who had Asperger's. I just found out. He's 14. He's also a big fan of anime. But the thing is, I don't know much about Asperger's. Could you give a definition on what it is so there's no misunderstanding, and what advice you would give young people who are struggling with the same thing?
Well, Asperger's is, it's high-functioning autism. It means you have difficulty understanding the social world, such as eye contact, sarcasm, body language, and the way people react to things. Like, for example, back when I was younger, I could make a joke or something at somebody and think it's pretty funny, and it turns out I would actually be rude and nasty without knowing it. And when my friends would get upset about it, I would be like, why are you mad at me? What did I do wrong? And they wouldn't really tell me. And then my father or something would tell me, like, you said this. To them, that's insulting and rude. And I was like, I thought that was funny. It turns out it wasn't. You really gotta pay attention to that. And my advice for young people with Asperger's is this. Well, what you can do is this. You can recommend, there are lots and lots of websites you can go to, which have a lot of advice on Asperger's, like Autism Speaks. That's a good place to start. And my advice for young people with Asperger's is this: you gotta do your homework. It's not gonna get better overnight. Here's what you do: you sit down, you read, you go to websites, you watch videos on YouTube, you get as much information as you can. You talk to your parents, you talk to your grandparents, you talk to your friends, you do as much as you can. And always remember these 2 things. It does get better, but you got to work on it. And second, don't give up, ever. There will be plenty of people out there who are going to shun you and ignore you and be mean and nasty to you because you're different or you're strange. And if they are, they're not worth your time, even if they do seem appealing. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a person with Asperger's syndrome, I'd like to thank you for telling your story to everyone.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you.
That's all.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
My name is James.
Hello, James. Everyone say hello.
Well, as a person with mild Asperger's too, I've also grown up in a very parallel situation such as yourself. And I've been sheltered by my educators, I've been sheltered by my own parents.
Yeah, I was pretty sheltered when I was a kid too.
And I've been in the special services since early elementary school up until I graduated high school. But my escapism growing up was also watching a lot of animes and also watching a lot of Disney movies because I felt like what the protagonists were feeling, and I also felt like certain characters like Ariel, Pinocchio, Quasimodo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, I felt like they were people out of place in their world and environment. And that's how I felt like I could relate to them.
They kind of were.
But my question I want to ask you is how can you let go of the past and bad memories? Because growing up, I still remember the bad experiences in middle school and high school are still fresh in my mind. And I still feel like I am an outcast even in society.
Well, here's what you can do. My advice to you is this. The past is the past. It's done. It's over. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to dwell on it. The people that were mean to you, if there were people that were mean to you, you don't have to worry about that anymore. If there were bad experiences, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Where you are now is where you are now. And that's what matters. If you keep looking behind yourself, you're eventually going to walk into a wall. Take me for example. I tried to repeat my past. Because the moment in my past, I was very happy. And I tried to repeat it. And it didn't work. Instead, it just made things worse. Because I went to all these things trying to get it to work again, and I realized, no, this is not going to work. This is not the right place and time. But that's another story. I hope that helps.
Hello, my name's Julian, and
Hello.
speaking as somebody with autism, I'm sorry about the things you've gone through and the ordeals you faced in the past. Have you ever been to any special organizations dedicated to autism and Asperger's?
Kinda, sorta. There was like a group therapy thing going on in Watertown back in Boston. I didn't